Yeah, come on, let's go. There we go.
So what does the president of like a sports team actually do?
That's an excellent question.
I've got about 500 people ask me that every day who actually work for the team. Just kidding. Can you in the back hear me? I don't know how loud I should be talking. All right, good. So every team is different. So now I'm with the Sounders. Previously I was with an organization that ran the 76ers in Philadelphia and the New Jersey Devils in the NHL. And before that I ran an NBA team in New Orleans. The presidents have two primary functions. One is they are the liaison with the owners. They're the ones, the investors, the people who own the team. They're the ones that write the checks and work with the leagues. And your job is to bring their vision to life in many ways. So every owner is different. Every entity is different. And so therefore, what's important to the organization and how you do it, the president has to be that person day to day to make sure that happens. The second thing you're doing is you're creating a place where people are excited to do what they do, that they want to work there. You would think that everybody wants to work in sports, but it is a really hard job. People talk about work-life balance in a real way when you work in sports and entertainment, because literally there are games going on all the time. And for you, when you go to a game or a concert or whatever, you think about getting immersed in the moment and having fun. And if you do, that means we've done our job. And if you think about all the things that are going wrong, that means we haven't. And to do that as a fan is a lot of fun, but to do it as the responsible person to make it happen takes a lot of responsibility. And so, again, making sure that the folks that are working for the organization are doing it with passion and love, and because that's what comes across when you go to a game, is that you're around people. That's why you would want to go versus watch on TV. So the president's role is just, at any given moment might be doing something different, and every day is different. So I don't know if that answers your question, but that's the truth. Am I supposed to be the coordinator, or no? I just if it.
You could just grab any.
All right, we'll go here.
How did you get into being Sounders or working in sports?
Yeah, so I guess the lesson here is serendipity, which is sometimes opportunities present themselves, and you have to be self-aware enough to know that if this is something that you feel like you can succeed at, and secondarily live without regrets. And so I was in a situation where I was actually had a formal business kind of education, was working in consumer products, worked for Procter & Gamble, worked for companies like that. And I happened to meet somebody who owned a sports team. And they were really super curious about my background, and I was super curious about sports. When I went to Bellarmine, when I grew up, I didn't think I want to be that person who works in sports. I just didn't. A lot of people do. They're passionate about it. And so I always challenge, if you're thinking about working in sports, understand what it is that you want to achieve through your career. The two men that you met earlier, Jay and Michael, were my 4th, 5th, and 6th grade teachers. They taught me the power of giving back and giving to others. And sports is an incredible platform to do that. And so it became a natural thing for me to jump from one industry to another. And just it's been obviously to be able to have impact and work with people and actually have a job that people think is interesting enough they want you to come talk about it to a group of 200, I guess is pretty fun. But yeah, that's how I got into it and why I love doing it.
Is there going to be any major changes to the sites? Is there going to be any major changes to either kind of what music's playing before the game starts, or is there?
I wasn't sure you're talking to Coach or me.
Yeah.
Changes.
Yeah, we'll talk about Bellarmine's music pregame after. I'll let Mrs. Weber answer first.
So the trick of running a team is that you want to make sure that you're not trying to do something that's so scripted And it's just, like, in other words, what might work for the Seattle Sounders may not work for the Kraken, may not work for the Seahawks. Like, it has to be unique to your fan base. And the Sounders have been super successful, right? They've got attendance records. They've been one of the top in the MLS. And so it's really more a matter of how we can take what has been a super successful franchise and make it even potentially successful on even a bigger stage. So, in other words, the Sounders have been great in Seattle. They've been great in MLS, but can we take them to a more of a worldwide stage? Can we make them make the brand bigger than just, maybe more in the way you think about the Cowboys or the Yankees, And I know that sounds super aspirational, but why not? We have the World Cup coming in 26. We've got soccer taking off in the U.S. There's, so that was a big reason why I chose to come back home, is that I see all these things happening here and really felt like I wanted to be a part of it. So what kind of music are we playing in the game?
Oh, well, that's important to get feedback from you, our fan base, who are going to be there tonight, right?
Who we play tonight?
Rogers tonight.
Oh.
Yeah, so I didn't see enough of you nodding yes. Like that you're gonna be, I know it's raining, but come on, this is Washington. We'll see you out there at 5:30.
What's the record so far this year?
And we're
We're developing?
Yeah, well, we're very good in terms of our league play. We lost the last couple just in the last couple minutes, and so we're talking to the boys about the fact that we're as good as everyone else in the league. It's just, we just need to tighten up a few things at the end, and we need to score a few more, as we know. So we're working on that. I have a feeling tonight's going to be a breakout match for us, and I think you're all going to be excited that you came to the match afterwards, even though it's raining. Okay. Oh, yeah.
How did your Bellarmine education change your job now? Do you think it really affected how you work?
Yeah, so a great and interesting question. I think what makes Bellarmine special, you probably all feel it. Just so you know, I'm a product of Bellarmine parents, and my sisters all went to Bellarmine, so it was very much ingrained. However, I'm unique in the sense that I had most of my formative years in public education in South Tacoma. So Bellarmine was very different experience for me than maybe it is for you, where you've been around the same humans for almost all your life. Maybe not all of you felt that way, but it was definitely that way when I came here. I would say Bellarmine gave me a sense of community, which goes back to my earlier answer about why things were important. I think it also established higher standards for me. It gave me a higher bar to shoot for, that anything was possible. And I would say the third thing is that the people that I met here in my time here, I've created and formed lifelong friendships. And so for the people that are sitting to your left and your right, you think, well, they're nice or whatever, but these are the folks that are going to get you through your life. And when you're my age, you'll look back on and say, we shared some pretty special moments. So I know your teachers, whatever, probably tell you this all the time, but just, be grateful for the present. I know you always are thinking about the future, you're thinking about what's coming, but these are the moments that will form the possibilities of your future. So.
But when you're going into this industry, even before or even in, what's the thing that kind of startled you, or is there anything that either startled you or made you oh, is this the right thing?
So just to make sure I understand your question, what was the thing early on that made me wonder if I made the right decision? Is that a fair way to ask the question? I can't say. The part that I've never gotten used to is that especially after you're with a team for a while and you have a social media presence and they know who you are and they want a picture with you and you're like, this is weird. It's just they don't, and so that part of it I've never gotten used to, but I'd say generally it's a gift. My job is a total privilege. And I think you wake up every day knowing that. I have the ability to impact and do things, and and it's fun. You know, I talked earlier about being a lot of work, but I won't lie. There's only 30 people that do it in soccer. There's only 30 people who do it in basketball. There's only 30 in NHL, and I've been fortunate to do all of them. So, pretty cool.
Jackson had a question there.
Who is your role model?
That guy back there, Michael Shogi. He was a huge one for me, honestly. Just to give you a quick story, Michael's first year teaching, I don't know, Michael, what were you, 27 or 28? And he came into my life and taught me about yin and yang and philosophy and thinking about self-awareness. And those are all things as a 10-year-old kid growing up in South Tacoma I just never thought about, but those are things that have stayed with me a long time. In terms of professional life, listen, I've met so many people. I think my advice to you would be there's never going to be that one sole source of truth for you. It's going to be your collection of humans that make it right for you. And I would say I've learned so many things from different people, and you'll be surprised when you're looking for insights where you'll find them. It might be the person that's pushing a broom. It might be a person who's standing on a podium, but it's not always the person sitting in the big chair in the fancy parking spot. It's not. Sometimes it's just the people that have quote unquote normal lives, and you can learn something from everybody. And if you're open to it, I think that's, again, curating those people in your life so that they're keeping you on path to be the best version of yourself is kind of the key.
Yeah, so as president of the organization, like how active of a role do you have as far as like the team side of things? Or is that more like separate from you, or?
Yeah, so every president's, we talked earlier about what a president's job is. Every job has been different for me, and they always start, because you are the liaison for the owners and the board usually, they trust you in terms of your methodology, the way you think, your decisions. You obviously have the financial side that has to make all the team decisions work. And so I've been as involved as setting the budgets, being able to approve trades, do things like that too, in both basketball and hockey. I ended up running hockey operations and running basketball operations, hiring coaches and hiring GMs. And people always ask me, like, well, you didn't play basketball and you didn't play hockey, so how did you do that? And I'm like, it's like hiring a good CFO, it's hiring a good marketing person. I may not know that job, but if you know how to align people, get them focused on the right things, you know, having them work smartly together, it's not any different, right? So right now, though, I work with Adrian Hanauer, who's the owner, Craig Weibel, who's the GM, Brian Smetzer, who's the coach, and myself. That's like the group that talks through all this stuff, and that's unusual but Schmetz has been around for 25 years, so he's earned the right to have a voice in where we go and what we do. But again, every team is different.
How does the MLS compare to the NBA and the NHL in your job?
So if you didn't hear the question, the MLS is, it's interesting. So there's a bunch of ways to answer the differences between the league. They're all different culturally. And people always say, well, what does that mean? How are they different culturally? Soccer and hockey are both teams of what I call weak league sports. In other words, you have to be good from the top of your roster to your bottom, whereas in the NBA, you can have 3 amazing players and kind of fill everybody else in and you can be good. And so the culture that reflects that. When you see, for example, LeBron James win the NBA title and the MVP, he's walking around the court with all and he's super happy with his trophies. And in hockey and soccer and other sports, they hand the trophy off almost immediately. It's not about the superstars that are doing it. And that shows up in small ways, operationally. Like when you travel with the team in the NBA, the players get on first, the coaches get on second, and the owners in front office get on last. When you travel in hockey, the owners in the front office get on first, and the players get on last. It's just they're all culturally very different. From the business standpoint, the MLS, to me, what it feels like in my month and a half being here, it feels like the NBA 25 years ago. half the teams are not making money. They're kind of not. They're still trying to find their way in terms of, are we a global brand? How we think about it? How do we compete against the European team? And that's all the stuff that 25 years ago when we was, sitting in the room talking about the NBA. That's what the NBA talked about. So I think, again, it kind of reinforces my point earlier. I think that MLS is on this base camp. It's not it's mature point. It's at a base camp of where soccer can be. And if you look at soccer growth globally, it's in the United States. That's where it's going to grow. So.
What goals do you have for the MLS? Like, is there any
I want the Bellarmine men's line soccer team to win tonight. That's my goal.
That's what we're talking about. I love it. That's all that matters. See? Keeping it local.
I'm sorry. What was my goal for what? I'm sorry.
What's your what's your goal for the MLS? Is it is it just to make it make soccer more bigger, or is it just to make it local?
So what way I would describe fandom is sometimes it's a mile wide and an inch deep. It's like people kind of know who teams are, but they don't really follow them. And then there's teams that have followings that are an inch wide and a mile deep. And I think the Sounders are much more on that. I mean, if you're a Sounders fan, it's awesome and it's great. But there's a lot of people who like sports or don't even like sports, but haven't been to a Sounders match. So it's how do you get the happy medium where you're a half mile wide and a half mile deep, and that's what the Sounders have to go. Where you have to get where they're socially relevant, people understand who they are. There's more than just a kind of a passing understanding of the Sounders and MLS, and that'll take time, probably 10 years to get there. But you have to have that aspiration to get there.
Luke?
There's a question for both of you.
Yes.
The question is, what is your favorite or most influential book you have ever read?
Oh, wow.
And why?
That's a tough one.
The Bible.
Well, yeah, that's game on, the Bible.
That's-
Yeah.
That was the easy one. We're sitting at Bellarmine. Right?
Yeah. I'm trying to think. I mean, there's so many. Do you have one?
To me, it's like it's a little bit like my answer on people. Having one book that's transformed your life is kind of, I love. Again, I think having a curiosity, you'll read, and if you can pick up one insight or different way of thinking from one book, it's good. But I can't say that there was one book that just guided me through. I think that there's a ton of things that I've borrowed from, and put in my own thinking. So sorry to disappoint. There's nothing to run out on Amazon and get.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I like to pick up something from everything. Man's Search for Meaning comes to mind. That's
good one.
That's one that kind of puts a lot of things in perspective. A former Holocaust survivor, and so sort of looks at the deeper meaning of life. So that's one that sticks out for me. But I agree.
That's a great book in the sense of. Think about someone who's in the worst imaginable environment you can imagine, and he's actually making observations about what's differentiating the people who are doing well versus those that are not. And so if you haven't read it, it's in fact it gives me a chills thinking about it. It's unbelievable,
Yeah, I like things that put my life in perspective, that no matter how rough things seem to be in any given moment for me, they're not. There's always something to push you through and to go on, and that leads you back to the Bible. There we go, full circle. Al?
Speaking of full circle, do you see that coming back to Seattle and now Bellarmine as a full circle, and seeing that the Sounders as a kind of end goal, as a last destination?
Yeah, it's super interesting question. When I was in my last role, what has always been my kind of fuel, what had always been my inspiration to keep just run is was to keep growing things. I love growing. I love and seeing teams do better. And so when I knew I wanted to do something different, location, geography, full circle, that never ever occurred to me. It was like, okay, what haven't I done yet? Where could I do something interesting? And I thought a lot about going to Europe, and I thought a lot about, because I have 4 grown adult children, and this was the first time in my career where I didn't have a location like, well, I need to stay close to, and I want to make sure grandparents are it wasn't part of the consideration set. So what I have found, however, it has been an amazing, I guess, humbling experience. It's just people that I haven't talked to in 20 years, not because we weren't close, but just because life gets in the way. You reconnect with them. To be able, and then the second thing, to be able to share what I do with people I love is fun, right? So the greatest thing about leading a team is that you get access to players and suites and fun things to do, and to be able to say, hey, do you guys all want to come to a game, and have people go, holy crap. I mean, to do that with people that you love is a lot of fun. I'm sure I'll get a lot more ticket requests after that.
Sure.
Earlier you mentioned how a big change between the MLS versus the NBA is kind of the culture. Do you think that kind of the soccer culture of the team environment rather than the superstar is kind of hurting the growth of the MLS on a national stage, because they're lacking the star figure, or a team doesn't really have I'm not trying to
No.
I can't name someone on this but
Joel Embiid.
Yeah, growth mindset.
So yes, this is how it affects it typically, right? Most of you probably have spent some time on social media today, maybe, TikTok, whatever. Most of the athletes that have the most following, the most that they're promoting, they're the superstars, but there are also a lot of NBA players do a really good job of becoming more socially relevant outside of. And if you look at the social followings of hockey and soccer players, it's just not much, because it's not their mindset to go put themselves out there, because they're part of a team, they're part of a collective. So in that way, if you talk to people about how you grow the sport, you have to be out, again, back to that half mile wide, half mile deep. You have to be socially relevant in some way. And it's hard to do in this environment, in this day and age, if you're not active on social media. That is the medium right now in our generation, or your generation, that is promoting relevancy, and soccer players and hockey players tend not to be. With the exception of obviously the Messis and the whatever.
Yeah, so to branch off of his question, on social media, I'm pretty sure I only follow 2 soccer players, and it is Messi and Ronaldo. So how does the MLS, how do you think the MLS help its players to get more to that level? Because they obviously have done a really good job of getting people like me who don't even really follow I don't really watch the Sounders if I'm watching soccer.
You just like that?
But I just have, but I still follow Messi and Ronaldo, right? Because they're that relevant, they're that good. So how does the MLS get to that level with its players?
It's going to take time. So it's all about what's interesting, right? Some of it is a vicious cycle. What makes Messi and Ronaldo interesting is that they are interesting to so many people.
Yeah.
You probably, the 100 million followers or more, 500 million, I don't even know what the number is anymore. But you wonder, what am I missing out on? 500 million people are following this person, right? There's some of that. But I think that what our players post and how they post it, is going to be what grows it. But I think it's going to take time for sure.
Anna?
Were you a fan of the Sounders before you became president?
I was, for different reasons. So when I was a kid, I didn't get to any games, but what I knew of the Sounders, that back then, I'm going to sound like an old person for a minute, time out. We had the Sonics. Some of you probably weren't even around when the Sonics were here. We had the Sonics and we had the Sounders. The Mariners weren't here, the Seahawks weren't here. We had Thunderbird Hockey, which was the AAA team, or the Breakers before that. But so yeah, I was a fan of anything Seattle, and they played, but did not get to games. What you'll find, if in fact you are in a position where you get into sports and you start working for teams, then you start rooting for friends. And Adrian Hanauer, who owns the Sounders, has been a friend of mine since we were 19 years old. And so I was always following the Sounders over the last 20-some years because he owned the team. But for that, I probably would not have followed the Sounders.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, go for it.
So we've been around the block and like we like to
Whoa,
avoid people.
whoa.
You've been in the industry a long time. How does someone
Keep working on it. Keep going.
how does someone fresh out of college like approach getting a job in this type of field?
Right, so here's the reality of the sports business. If you see a job online, you'll be in line with like 1,000 other people. So you have to figure out what is going to differentiate you when your number is called. One is your network, right? So an offer I'll throw to this group is, I'll help in any way. And so if you see a job or if you are interested in a job in sports, definitely will get you connected in the right places, have you thinking about the right things. The second thing is you have to differentiate yourself in terms of your experiences. So what I mean by that is volunteer, and not just necessarily in sports. Go do interesting things, working with people, volunteering in the community, doing all of those things matter because it shows that you have more depth and more complexity and more dimensions than just someone who got incredible grades and went to school, right? So, and again, and you'll be surprised how your network will grow, and then you'll have one degree of separation from somebody who knows somebody who can get you that chance to go from number 933 in that list of 1,000 to number 12. And that's all anybody can afford you, is the chance to get in the room to have the conversation about why you want to work in sports. But the rest is up to you. So. I don't know who's coordinating anymore.
Luke? Oh,
I'm
okay.
gonna ask,
Okay.
what is your personal definition of success, and kind of like how do you feel that's carried you throughout your life?
Wow, we're getting deep now. So the question was my personal definition of success and how has that carried me through life?
Yeah.
Right. So success to me is someone who has a positive impact on others, period, and stop. Like that, whatever that looks like. I think there's the ways to get there. There's obviously you have to measure a bunch of things along the way. I think I think that's a never-ending objective. Like it never stops. You never, and I think that's probably true. And I hope that's something you would think about in your career, your life, whatever. It's not like I have a goal to become that, because once you get there, it's never enough, right? So it's, for me, I think that's the big one, and then how you can do it in deeper and more meaningful ways has always been what's guided me, in the jobs I've taken and the things I've thought about.
Luke, I was wondering, with you being involved in hockey and basketball and soccer and cross country and track, what is your favorite sport?
Wow. So people ask me this all the time because, again, I've just been fortunate to see so many things. And going back to an earlier answer I had, which is that once you work in sports, it's hard to be a fan. So I can't, even though I've never worked in baseball, I can't go to a Yankees game without going, I wonder why they do that, and that sign looks off, and what are they doing this for? Like my mind just keeps going because it's a business. That's how I think about it. I have 4 kids, and it's to me it's a little bit like saying which one's your favorite. I mean, there's ones that are clearly easier to be with than the others for those that are parents. But no, I enjoy the NBA for the reasons that the NBA is what it is. It's some of the best live entertainment in sports. If you've ever sat courtside an NBA game, it's unbelievable. I love hockey. Hockey, human beings are some of the best, my favorite human beings in the world. They're just like us. And soccer is, again, global. It's the same. It's like hockey, but it's global in a different way. So I don't have a long-winded way of saying I love them all, passionate about them all. But tonight, my favorite sport is boys soccer for Bellarmine.
Again, you already got the job. You don't need to apply.
We got one back here.
Taking it to like the business side of things, like as you being a successful businessman, like what are like the best ways to like help grow a business, like in the recent years?
Wow. Okay. Best way to grow a business is well, if there was one rule, I would say is you always have to think about how what you're doing can be improved. I mean, it sounds simple, it sounds easy, but you'd be surprised how many organizations or teams I walked into. They say, well, we've always done it this way. This is what our fans want. Like, are you sure about that? Because only 30% of the people are showing up. So I think I look at businesses as they're puzzles. So it's not like you have to figure out how to put them together in a way that is appealing to more people, and then get align and motivate people, the right types of people that can come in and solve that puzzle for you. I tend to lead organizations where I give kind of a big vision of where we want to go, and we have really motivated people who are excited about solving puzzles, as opposed to, is there an instruction manual, and can you give it to me, and I'll follow it, and tell me what page my job is on, and I'll do it. Like that just doesn't. Now there are organizations that are like that, but I think to me, which is you have a collective of people who are really energized about solving complex problems. That's how businesses grow.
What is the community you've had the most growth?
The community I had the most growth in. Are you talking about a physical community, or like just a community of people, or anything? So one of the most kind of prolific moments in my career was post Katrina, Hurricane Katrina in New Orleans. Again, 2005, probably long before your memories. But there was this storm that devastated New Orleans, wiped out the city. Happened to be running an NBA team in New Orleans. You can imagine the storm hit the city at the end of August, and our season was starting 5 weeks later. And literally 80% of the homes in the community were wiped out. So we quickly moved to Oklahoma City, played 2 years there. But much of what I learned and kind of resonated with me of why I work in sports was encapsulated in that 5-year stretch post-Katrina in New Orleans, because there wasn't enough basketball fans in New Orleans to support an NBA team, but there were enough people who loved their community who would come out to a basketball game because it meant that they were part of something bigger than themselves. And I'll tell you a quick story. In 2005, the storm hits. In January of 2006, so you can imagine, like when I say there was devastation, and we always see this footage on the news where you see someone's home floating away, and you're like, gosh, that's awful. And then but until you actually walk through mile after mile after mile, and the water got 11 feet high, of just pure devastation. It's hard to take it in. But we came back for our first home game. 5 months later, we played the Lakers in New Orleans. The population was wiped out, but we sold out this game because there were a bunch of workers there. And a woman who was in her mid-60s came up to me, and she said, she had tears in her eyes, and she gave me a hug, and she said, "Thank you so much." She said, "I'm living in my car right now, but I have to be here tonight." And I was like, oh boy, where are your priorities? And she said, coming to these games is what makes me feel like life is normal. Right? And so that's the power of what we do. That is what you hope your entire team and organization is motivated for, those moments that people go, oh my gosh, I love coming to matches because my dad and I, or my mom and I, came when I was whatever. And that's the power of what we do.
Do you have any pieces of advice for people who want to be in a high position like you?
Don't manage your career. Do your job really well. Always be curious. Instead of thinking about what your next job is or what you want to do next in the organization or who is in your way to get the job you want, think about what the organization needs and volunteer to go do it. And I think that's true for anything. If you're a teammate, if you're part of any community, instead of thinking about what is best for you, if you think about what's best for the group, you will always be asked to do more, and you'll always get the benefits of that. I never managed myself to have, again, the fancy office and the best parking spot. Never thought of it that way. I wanted to do, really interesting work and help the team as much as I could. And invariably what happened is they kept tapping me on the shoulder to do more. And I know you say that you lean on your best players more, you lean on the best contributors more, and I think you'll just find that your career will take care of itself. Easiest press conference ever.
Uh-oh. Here you go.
What's your, what's the biggest negative about your job?
Biggest negative.
See, I knew he was gonna.
Yeah, he's trying to trick me.
He's gonna make it hard.
Biggest, I don't think that way. So it's kind of, honestly, it's biggest negative. I would love to be in 50 places at once, but other than that, it's like I said, it's a privilege to do what I do.
When you find yourself at games and thinking, oh, why are they doing this or that? Do you kind of miss not being able to think like that when you're at games?
Yes. That's what I miss. That's the worst part of my job. Last time I was a pure fan was Super Bowl when the Seahawks won. I was in New York. I was with my family. My dad was alive at the time. My mom. That was amazing. And so, yeah, I do miss that.
I don't know. I'm not part of the journalism. Thank you for coming and joining us. I am curious because we have one of our alums that works with the Ray Foundation, the organization. And I know you've only been on a job a couple months, but being the charitable arm of the Sounders,
Yep.
have you given any thought with all your background and obviously your sensitivity to community needs as you expressed in one of where you see the Ray Foundation going and how that can be a bigger impact on the local communities?
Right. So if you don't know, Ray Foundation is the charitable arm or partner for the Sounders, focused primarily on right to play and developing the underserved communities. So it's listen, the way I look at it is the more successful the Sounders are, the more successful Rave will be. Right. The Ray Foundation is a tangible manifestation of our values, but we're doing that work, and hopefully focused on that work in everything we do, as opposed to I've worked for teams where the foundation was just kind of it's over here. What's really nice about the Sounders is the Ray Foundation is the core, really at the core of the brand. So. Again, I just think bigger, bigger, bigger. So the more we can do, the more we can do.
Did you have to do a lot of media training for your job, or did it take time to get used to being in the spotlight, I guess?
Yes and yes. You get media training, and then it's just comfortable. It's just easier. I know when you have your speech classes or do it, you stand up in front of everybody, you feel nervous, and then after a while, you'll feel comfortable. I'm among friends anyway. This is easy. The harder one is when you're in front of people who want to catch you, like you said, saying something wrong or doing something, and you know it. So.
I have a question. What article did you write for the Bellarmine?
Oh,
Do you remember
oh,
any article?
you knew that was coming.
Do
You know
remember
what?
in
Speaking
my-
of that person who's trying to get, we're trying to get you right there.
I can go back.
You know what's funny is that I love to write now, and I didn't love to write then. So I remember myself like drawing more pictures. I don't remember editorial cartoons or something.
We'll pull them out. It's something
Yeah.
I'll send you.
Oh my gosh, it's not my best work. Trust me.
So either during like it can be either in life or in the business, but like whenever something's not like per se going your way or just not going how you think it's going to go, like the foundation is just kind of like crumbling or just like something's just not going right, how do you like kind of like overcome that to try to turn like the MBA to the right direction that
Right.
you're thinking of?
This is a question for both of us, I think,
Okay.
because you guys are not performing as well as you want, right?
No, I was just he's right. I was just thinking about that.
So I'll let you go first.
No, okay. That's a great question because that's at the heart of any team, you know. And you know, when you're coaching, or I haven't been a president, but I would assume it's a similar sort of perspective that you anguish over the reality that it's not going as well as you think it could. Like for me, you guys asked a question earlier, kind of about how you define success. Our players, we talk about, it's not whether or not you win the state championship that's success, that defines success necessarily, because only one team every year can do that. But it is about trying to figure out, are we reaching our potential that we believe we're capable of reaching? And that's how ultimately we will define success at the end. Of course, parts of that are wins and losses, parts of that are, you know, scoreboards on any given night. But when it's not going as well as you believe it can be, it is really, for me, it's about grabbing onto everybody who's a part of that and saying, and bringing us together and saying, we're all functioning, we're working hard, but we're not working as well together as we ultimately could be, because at least for us, it's about a team. And every person on that team is vital to the team's success. Doesn't matter if it's the goal scorer, or if it's the goalkeeper, or if it's the player who's not playing as many minutes as that player wants, because any one of them can impact the team's success ultimately. And so it's really about, for me, it's about trying to make sure that those relationships are really as sound as they can be, and understanding that, trying to help each person understand how important they are, even though they might not think that in the moment. Because if not everyone's putting everything they possibly can into it, then we're not going to ever reach that potential. So I hope that makes some sense.
Yeah, great. I would add from an individual standpoint, I think what I heard your question was, is like when everything's going wrong, what do you do, whether it's a team or a person, or is that fair?
Yeah.
Okay. I just think that like sometimes there's things that are out of your control that are causing disarray. And sometimes it just takes one small effort in one small area of your life, whether it's, I'm going to get up and walk tomorrow a mile, and I'm going to get like, and that's how you build habits and momentum that then they just turn into, and too often people think about, how do I just change the direction of everything? And it doesn't work that way. And then whether it's a team, you've heard this adage, coaches say, you know, basketball coaches, just get one stop and score a basket, and then pretty soon you're not down by 20 anymore, you're down by 10, and then pretty soon the momentum's changed. Like, I think life is just that way. Like, you just have to figure out those small moments to make those small changes.
That's exactly what I say to myself when my wife's beating me in tennis. Just get the next point. That's it. And I can't. Don't think about the set.
Yeah.
Alec.
Have you been under any controversy with the Sounders or with any other teams, and how does a person in your position deal with anything like that?
That's a good question. There's always controversy, because there's always different opinions about how things should be handled. Ironically, even before I started, if you're not a Sounders fan, this probably doesn't mean anything to you, but we announced a new kit sponsor, Providence healthcare. Providence is a Catholic-run hospital system, huge system, and they have certain policies that align with the faith-based kind of the way that the church thinks about certain things. And that didn't resonate with a big portion of our fan base, and they reacted. And again, even though I wasn't public-facing yet, I was trying to advise everybody. The first thing is the fact that you're fans, or the fact that there is a controversy around something like that, it's actually a good symptom. That means that people know what you stand for, and they know that you stand for inclusivity, and this doesn't seem like it aligns with that. And so the first mindset was like, you have to go into it with, like, you're assuming positive intent. You're assuming too often people get defensive during controversies, like, well, I don't know why you think that way, and I don't know why am I getting called out, whatever. And I think just being empathetic and positive, it'll get you through those times. But back to whoever asked the question about media training, I think you did. There are real tactics about how to get through controversies, and usually kind of going back to the core of why you made a decision and sticking to it. These things usually go away over time, as long as you're not breaking the law, which we don't. So
we'll take 2 more questions.
Other than positive, is it safe to say that you embrace a growth mindset in your day career?
I'm still trying to grow, for sure.
Cool.
Yeah, I think that's, whether you're 8, 18, 88, I think that to me, like my mom is 89, she is actively growing, she's reading, she's doing things, she's active in trying to figure out how she can get better every day. And so I think that actually differentiates her from the people who are 70 who are like, I'm retired and sedentary. I think it's the fuel for life for sure.
Okay, last question, and then afterwards we want to present a couple things to you, Hugh, and then maybe even a group. But let's see, last question is going to be really good, right?
How about someone we haven't heard from?
Too much pressure?
What's the big acquisitions that are coming up?
The big acquisition what? Oh, coming up?
Coming up.
You try to break news here, huh? Jeez.
Trent Krim from the Independent.
There you go. Too soon to say yet. Few things coming.
What role will you have, if any, in the World Cup in 2026?
So those of you who don't know, 26 World Cup is coming. I'm on the advisory board for Seattle. I'm on the board for Seattle's local advisory group. So pretty involved, I think. The question that we ask ourselves about how the World Cup can help Seattle is, what is the legacy that the World Cup will leave behind, as opposed to a bunch of people coming from all over the world to Seattle and spending a few dollars and eating meals in restaurants. What does Seattle look like in 2028 to 2038 to 2048 because the World Cup came? And for those of you who are not soccer fans, the World Cup is it's like having 10 Super Bowls all at once, so it's a big deal. So yeah, that's what we're working on, and we'll see. We have 3 years to get there.